As Erin said, I have 5 kids. My oldest is a senior this year. My youngest are twins. They are in 6th grade. So not only am I coming to you to speak professionally with information, but also personally. I completely understand what it's like to get home from work, have a quick turnaround, try to get dinner on the table, and then run kids in 100 different directions. So I'm here to offer both professional information as well as just what works as a in the practical sense. All right, tonight we are going to do an overview of nutrition. All right, so we're going to be talking about macronutrients, what you need for health, for sports nutrition. We're also going to be talking about creating plans. All right, nutrition is one of those things that doesn't just happen. Just like when you're playing a sport, you go to practice. You don't just do something new on game day. You actually have to try things at practice, see what works. Everybody responds to nutrition a little bit differently. So there is no one-size-fits-all recommendation when it comes to nutrition. We have to try things and see what works best for you. So we're going to talk a little bit about the practical part of planning your food. We're also going to do a little bit of discussion about pre and post workout nutrition. So what to eat before, what to eat after. And then we're also going to do a brief talk about hydration and sports drinks and caffeinated beverages, because I know there are a lot of athletes that are drinking things other than water, and so we want to just talk about it and make sure you're doing it safely. At the end, we are going to open it up to some questions. If you are watching virtually, there is a Q&A feature on Zoom. You can go ahead and just throw your questions in there, and at the end, we'll go over them as well. All right, so when it comes to nutrition, there are 3 major macronutrients. You've probably heard of them all: carbohydrates, proteins, and fats. We're going to break them all down specifically tonight and talk about what they are, what they do for your body, and why they are important when it comes to sports performance. All right, but the general thing, if you take nothing else from this talk, the one thing I do want to make sure that you are fully aware of and understand is that what you eat on a consistent basis matters so much more than what you eat right before a game. A lot of times when we think about sports nutrition, we want to think, okay, what do I need? How many grams of carbohydrates? How much protein do I need? And that's all great, but if your normal day-to-day diet isn't where it needs to be, what you eat right before a game isn't going to give you the competitive advantage that you're hoping for. So we really want to look at your overall diet first and foremost, get your foundation strong, and then we can start to discuss things like pre and post workout nutrition. That's when you're going to see the results. So let's start with carbohydrates. Carbohydrates are an athlete's best friend. Carbohydrates are what give you energy, and they give you endurance. Every athlete, if you're looking for a competitive advantage, you're looking for strength, you're looking for speed, you're looking for endurance, you're looking for power. Carbohydrates are your fuel source in order to be more successful. So the reason why carbohydrates are so important is because they are very quickly and efficiently broken down into energy. Your body is very, very good at breaking carbs down quickly and turning them into energy so you can use them on the field, court, wherever you're playing. All right. The other reason why carbohydrates are so important is because they're important for concentration and focus. How many times have you been on the field or during practice and your coach has yelled at you to get your head in the game, right? Pay attention, focus, concentrate. Carbohydrates not only give you the energy and endurance to be physically be able to do your sport, but mentally to be able to make good decisions. For example, let's say you're playing soccer, you're dribbling down the field. You have to make split-second decisions at every moment. Am I going to keep dribbling? Am I going to try to go around this defender? Am I going to pass the ball? Who am I passing it to? Am I going to try to shoot and score? Where am I going to try to aim the ball into the net? Am I going to go in the upper left corner? Am I going to go to the bottom right? You're constantly making split-second decisions when you play a sport, and carbohydrates enable you to make the best decision. Okay, so Carbohydrates are extremely important for athletes. We want to make sure that the majority of their diet is coming from carbohydrates, but not all carbohydrates are created equal. There's actually two different types of carbohydrates that we want to focus on. We have complex and we have simple. So complex carbohydrates can be otherwise known as fiber. And when we think of fiber and complex carbs, we think of long and strong. So they're going to give you energy, but they're going to give you energy for a long amount of time. This is important if you're doing endurance sports or if you're playing a sport that has several quarters, right? You don't want to have energy just for the first quarter. You want to have energy for all 4 quarters. And having a foundation of complex carbs in your diet allows for you to do that. We also can have simple carbohydrates. Simple carbohydrates are broken down. They're not as complex in chemical structure, but they do provide energy to your body. There's a time and place for complex and a time and place for simple carbohydrates, and we're going to get into that when we talk about pre- and post-workout nutrition. But just know that both of these foods can be part of an athlete's diet. It just really comes down to when you're eating them and how much you're eating. All right? And then finally, when it comes to carbohydrates, so let's talk about sources. Ideally, for those complex carbs, we want things like whole grains. We want things like brown rice and whole wheat pasta and whole wheat crackers. Those are great sources of complex carbs, things with fiber in them. We also can think of beans and fruits and vegetables as sources of carbohydrates. We need all of these in our diet. When it comes to carbohydrates, one of the recommendations that I like to give is to eat foods that rot, which I know sounds disgusting, right? But eating foods that rot basically means eat foods that have life in them, right? Foods that rot have nutrients, vitamins, minerals, and these vitamins and minerals are really important because they are what convert carbohydrates into energy, right? If you want to be able to quickly rely on energy from your body, you need to be able to do it in split second, and vitamins and minerals are the key components to make that happen. You probably have heard somewhere along the way when it comes to eating healthy, shop the perimeter of the grocery store. The reason why that recommendation is made is because historically all the refrigerators were situated along the outside of the perimeter because they had to be plugged into a wall, right? So all the foods that required refrigeration, because the foods had life in them in order to extend the shelf life, they were situated on the perimeter. And so if you want to eat healthy foods, you want to shop the perimeter. Your body is constantly changing over cells. Every 3 months, you make new red blood cells. Every 6 weeks, you make new skin cells. Where does your body get the raw materials to make those cells? It's through your food. So if you're eating foods with life in them, with nutrients, guess what your cells are going to be made out of? Life, nutrients. And you're going to feel more energetic, you're going to have more stamina, and you're going to be able to convert those nutrients into energy more efficiently. How many servings of produce does an athlete need? About, depending on your age and your sex, about 7 to 11 servings a day. I know, 7 to 11 servings a day. Most of my clients can't even get 7 to 11 servings of produce a week. But again, there's a lot more demand on your body. Not only are you growing, but you're also you're putting a lot of effort into your sport. You're breaking things down and you need to rebuild them back up. And so you want to give your body the nutrients it needs in order to do that well. So listen, if you're not at 7 to 11 servings of produce a day right now, that's all right. Start where you're at and then slowly build until you get there. But we do need more servings of produce in our diet, especially as an athlete. All right, protein. This is something that we hear a lot about when it comes to sports nutrition, so let's talk about it. Protein, what are our sources? They're going to be things like meat, so things like chicken, turkey, fish, red meat, pork, beef. Eggs are a source of protein. Dairy products, so milk and yogurt, cottage cheese are good sources. Beans can also be another source of protein, nuts and seeds, and soy. So there's animal sources of protein and there's also plant sources of protein, and both are important in the athlete's diet. The reason why we need protein is first and foremost for recovery. Every time that you are in a sport and you're playing something, you are breaking things down. And if you want to show up the next day and be able to perform, you need to recover quickly, and protein allows for that to happen. Another reason why protein is so important is for muscle building, okay? As student athletes, there is never a time in your life where you're going to be able to build muscle more easily than right now. As you get older, that process gets harder. And so in order to build muscle, remember, when you exercise, you break down muscle. And when you eat protein, you build it back up bigger and stronger. So if your goal is to increase strength and increase muscle, you do that with protein. You also need some carbohydrates to make that happen, but protein is the main event, all right? Protein is also a major component in hemoglobin. Hemoglobin is responsible for bringing oxygen to the muscles and also helpful in fluid balance. You know that if you overheat and you get too hot, you start to break down and fatigue. And so protein can help with fluid balance. And so those are the reasons why we want to have enough protein in your diet. If you are an athlete looking to build strength specifically, I know with some sports that is a main motivator. A good place to start is about 75% of your weight. So if you weigh 200 pounds, 150 pounds would be 75%. So 150 grams of protein could be a safe place to start. But how much protein you need really depends on your age, your sex, your height, your weight, and what sport you're playing. So this is just a general idea to get you started, but those numbers could vary depending on your sport and your goals. And finally, we have fat, all right? We don't really think of fat as something we need to seek out. A lot of times it comes with the protein we're eating. But the main thing when it comes to fat is we want to ideally seek out plant sources, okay? So things like olive oil, avocados, nuts, seeds, olives are great plant sources. When we eat too much animal sources of fat, so think red meat and butter and things like that, that can be pro-inflammatory in our body and make our body work harder than it has to. So we want to try to seek out plant sources as much as possible. Fats are important because they're a major component to every single cell in your body. Your cell membranes are made of fat, so we need it for your cells. We also need it for protection to your organs, insulation, so temperature regulation, and nutrient absorption, specifically vitamins A, D, E, and K. All right? So we want to make sure that we have all three of these nutrients in your diet. They're all very important in making sure that you show up and perform the way you want to. Now, I told you in the beginning, we got to create a plan. Most of the time when it comes to nutrition, we just hope for the best, right? We'll eat something, we'll eat our normal breakfast, we'll eat our normal lunch, we'll eat our normal dinner, and then we'll kind of look at our nutrients at the end of the night and we'll realize, wow, I was really short on produce today, or I didn't hit my protein numbers. Nutrition, at least good nutrition, sports nutrition, requires creating some sort of plan, looking at your diet ahead of time and figuring out where are the gaps, and then making sure that you have the foods that you need. I want to kind of go through each of the different meals and give you recommendations so you can help plan your specific sports nutrition regimen. One of the questions I get often though as an athlete is how many times should I eat in a day? All right. Most of my student athletes, when they come to see me, they may be eating 2 to 3 times a day. And when I say 3 times a day, they're not eating breakfast, lunch, and dinner. A lot of my student athletes, when they come, they're skipping breakfast. My kids included, right? They want to sleep as long as possible, and then they want to roll out of bed and then go right to school. So I'm constantly on their cases to make time to eat something. My middle son, he's a junior. We actually, for his birthday, he wanted to go see a trainer, so we got him a session. He came back from the session and he said that, I was like, how'd it go? And he's like, great. He told me I should eat breakfast. I'm like, okay, sure, Parker, right? Like, of course you should be eating breakfast. I have been telling you to eat breakfast for how long? But it doesn't matter because nutrition is never well received from parents. Even if your parent is the professional, they still don't listen. So I was very thankful for that session because if anything, it got Parker to eat breakfast and I'll take the win, right? But for some of us, or some of our kids, they're not eating breakfast, right? They may eat breakfast when they're younger because you have more of a say in what they do, but as they get older, they start making their own decisions, and breakfast is one that they usually will bypass. It is very, very difficult to get all of your complex carbs needs, your protein needs, your micronutrient needs when you're only eating lunch, dinner, and a snack after school. So ideally for my athletes, I do try to recommend eating about 5 to 6 times a day. All right, so if you are eating breakfast and lunch, an after school snack, dinner, and then an evening snack, that can work. If you have athletes that are waking up early because they have early morning trainings, they may need to add an extra morning snack into their routine. But again, very, very hard for athletes to get in all the nutrients that they need if they're only eating a couple times a day. And usually, because they're so active, they're hungry. So about every 3 hours or so is a good rule of thumb to eat. When it comes to breakfast, again, please do not skip this meal, all right? The one thing when it comes to breakfast is just watch out for a lot of sugary foods, okay? So again, we want complex carbs as much as possible. If you're looking at cereals, I know that a lot of cereals are more like dessert, and those are the ones that kids like, but if you can try to find a cereal with single gram added sugars, that's gonna be in a better spot, all right? So you look at the nutrition label, you look at added sugars. If it's single digits, like 9 grams or less, you're in a better place. Ideally, I'd like for it to be under 6 grams of added sugar to start the day. Remember, carbohydrates are important for energy and concentration and focus. So this is an opportunity for you to get your student athlete to do well in school, right? Again, how many of them are rolling out of bed, skipping breakfast, and then they're kind of sleeping through their morning schedule? So again, we want to make sure that they're getting some type of complex carb. The main point when it comes to breakfast is make it accessible and easy, so it's a no-brainer for them to grab. So whether that's cereal because it's easy, whether that's an egg sandwich as they're walking out the door, whether it's a yogurt parfait or even a smoothie, all these can be great options for breakfast. When it comes to lunch, all right, so my preference would be to pack lunch, and this is not anything against school lunches, but the type of foods that are offered and the foods that the student athletes are actually selecting, sometimes they're not making their best choices. When I ask my kids what they got for lunch at school, it's usually pizza. Okay, we can work with pizza. I'm like, did you have a fruit or a vegetable with it? Nah, I didn't like the ones that were offered. Okay, great, so you just ate pizza. And then my oldest, he's like, yeah, well, I got double lunch because one piece of pizza wasn't gonna fill me up. So then I got 2, so I'm like, great, now we're just getting double lunches and nothing has nutrient value in it. I'm okay if you get school lunch, but if you don't like the other foods that are offered with it, can you just bring them along? Can you pack a fruit or a vegetable to go with it? Can you pack some, some dairy so you get your calcium for that? Can you just supplement what is offered if you're gonna buy school lunches? If you are gonna pack though, look for opportunities. I know my kids, they know they have to have some type of whole grain, some type of protein, a fruit, a vegetable, dairy, and then I let them pack something fun, all right? I'm not like, they can have fun foods too, but I wanna make sure that they have the other nutrients as well. All right, if you're making sandwiches, can you throw in some extra vegetables on top of the sandwich? Can you throw a side of carrot sticks with your lunch? Can you throw an apple in, right? These doesn't necessarily have to be difficult things, but look for opportunities to add balance to the meal and add nutrients. I'm a big fan of leftovers. They tend to be the most nutritionally balanced meal of the day. Typically, we put a little bit more effort into our dinners, so if there's leftovers for that, I'm a big fan. Get a thermos, whatever you need to do to keep it warm. The kids can enjoy that for lunch the next day. All right, dinner. Ideally for dinner, we want to have 3 main components. We want to have fiber, starch, we want to have protein, and we want to have produce. Again, same consistent message. About 1/4 of your plate should be protein, 1/4 should be starch, and 1/2 should be produce. Now, a quick note to the parents in the room, just because I do work with adults as well, and a lot of times we work with weight management. Sometimes I have parents that they tend to skip over the starch because they have their own health goals. And somewhere along the line, carbohydrates got a bad rap, and so they skip the carb and just make protein and produce, all right? If you have a student athlete, please make sure that you are offering some type of starch because, again, this is their energy source. It's one thing if you don't want to eat it, but we still need to remember to make it and offer it to our athletes, okay? So if you are not planning on making something, make sure you have some things accessible and available for them to fill in that gap. And as much as possible, try to eat family dinners. I know this is hard. We may eat family dinners maybe 2 or 3 times a week, so we're not great at doing it every night just because we got people going in different directions. But as much as possible, please try to come together as a family and eat. This is a great opportunity for mental health, right? To come together, grounding, a safe spot for kids to come to and learn to lean on, knowing that they can reconnect with their family, even if it's not every night. Snacks. I just told you that we need to be eating about every 3 hours. And so obviously we're going to need some snacks along the line to make that happen. Again, carbs and protein balance. We need carbs for energy. We need protein for satiety. Protein's going to fill you up a little bit longer, help you feel full so you can get to the next meal. So we're going to need to bring in some snacks. I know my kids usually bring a snack into school for right after school before practice. They'll eat something there. Their snack ends up being their pre-workout nutrition, which we'll get to in a second. If you are going out to eat, and let's be honest, it happens, especially if once your kids get their license and a job, you kind of lose control over what they eat, right? Because they have access to the food themselves. So my kids go out to eat sometimes. I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with it, but if you can encourage them to make a few healthier choices along the way, that would be fantastic. Again, are there opportunities to throw vegetables on your sandwich? If you don't like lettuce and tomato, maybe when you're going to Wawa and getting a hoagie, can you put cucumbers and sweet peppers on it, right? I'm not picky, just if there's any opportunity for you to get some produce on that plate, do it. Can you pick a healthier side dish? You know, maybe fries aren't your thing, but you take them just because they're included in the meal. Can you opt for a side salad or a side of fruit instead? And then in terms of the beverage, obviously water is going to be your best choice, especially if you're going out to eat. The meal's most likely really salty in nature anyway, and so being able to balance that with some extra water is always going to be the healthiest choice. I wanted to show you what a sample meal plan looks like. Now, again, calories, protein, all of that depends on the athlete, their age, their sport, their goals. Most of my athletes need anywhere between 2,700 to 4,000 calories a day, just again, based on how much activity they're doing, how much they're working out, their goals. But I wanted to show you an example of what a meal plan can look like for a student athlete. And I wanted to show you that it doesn't have to be overly complicated, right? I can give you all these beautiful meal plans of what they look like, but if your athlete doesn't like the foods, they're never gonna follow it. So I wanted to show you what could something look like that most student athletes would be receptive to. So they start their day off with some protein in the eggs, with veggies. Again, whatever veggies you have on hand, whichever ones they like. This is not a battle to fight, all right? And then some type of smoothie where they can get more nutrients in. Snack is just a oatmeal protein cookie. You'll notice lunch, again, nothing crazy with lunch. Turkey and cheese wrap with almonds, peppers, and an apple. If you picked up one of the handouts when you walked in, there's a recommendation for a chicken black bean wrap that's really easy to make and very healthy and tasty. Snack is a trail mix here. Dinner, spaghetti, chicken, and vegetables. That's actually what we had for dinner tonight before I came here. And then some peanut butter banana toast for a snack at night. And you'll notice that's about 3,000 calories, 150 grams of protein. All right, so again, doesn't have to be complicated, but it does need to be intentional and well thought out. All right, we're going to move to pre and post workout nutrition. So now We got our foundation set in place. We're eating carbs, proteins, and fats, exactly what we need. And we talked about planning our meals, making sure that they're all accounted for so that we're getting our nutrient needs met. Now let's talk specifically about what to eat before an event. So practice, a game, whatever exercise you're doing. Biggest thing you want to take home when it comes to pre-workout nutrition is don't do anything new on game day. Please do not try anything new on game day. You have to practice. Just like you practice your sport, you have to practice eating at practices before you get to the main event because you don't know how your body is going to handle the food. I have some clients, I have one lady, she runs marathons. She can literally eat a peanut butter and jelly sandwich seconds before walking out the door and running miles. I have other clients who can only tolerate drinking a few sips of Gatorade because the thought of food makes them nauseous. So again, there is no one size fits all when it comes to pre-workout nutrition. You have to practice different foods to see how you handle them and to get your body used to performing with food in your stomach. The reason why we want pre-workout nutrition, it's going to give you energy. We've talked about that the whole entire night. You want to make sure that you have energy to show up and perform, fuel your muscles, prevents low blood sugar. All right. When you have not eaten in a long time, your blood sugar starts to drop, and exercise makes your blood sugar drop even more. So let's say you have practice at 3:30. All right. Your lunch is at 11 o'clock. You ate your lunch. From 11 to 3, your blood sugar will start to drop, and then you go to practice, and that exercise means your blood sugar is dropping even more. All right. Low blood sugar means headaches, it means feeling lightheaded, it means feeling fatigued. And that is not what you want to feel when you are trying to improve your performance. All right, it also absorbs some gastric juices. We know that there's some acid in your stomach to help you digest food. Sometimes just having a little bit of food in your system can absorb those juices and not make you feel nauseous or sick. The other thing it does is prevents hunger. There's nothing worse than being out on the court and hearing your stomach growl and feeling hungry. That's distracting, and it's not necessary. What do we need to eat before a workout? Back to carbs and proteins. Carbohydrates are your energy source. Again, very quickly and efficiently broken down into energy. Protein, just a little bit of protein, I'm talking about 5 to 7 grams of protein before an event, actually helps prime your muscles to get them ready for recovery after your exercise. So we always want to have a little bit of balance of both. One of the biggest myths when it comes to pre-workout nutrition is that if you eat something, it's going to give you an upset stomach, it might give you diarrhea, it might make you sluggish, but in reality, eating the wrong types of foods or eating too much of the wrong types of foods is what will upset your stomach. And if you choose not to eat anything at all, that will result in a sluggish performance. So we want to make sure that we're choosing the right things in the right amounts so that you can feel your best. When it comes to pre-workout nutrition, it is all about timing. All right? What you can tolerate will depend on how large the meal is and the hours between the eating experience and your sport. So for example, if you eat a large meal, it's going to take about 3 to 4 hours to fully digest. Now remember, when you eat food, blood flow goes to the stomach to help you digest. When you exercise, blood flow goes to your muscles to help you move them. You do not want to have conflicting areas of blood flow. That's what causes stomach cramps and nausea and things like that. So we want to make sure that what you have consumed is completely out of your system before you get to your event. So big meals take about 3 to 4 hours to digest. Smaller mini meals take about 2 to 3 hours. Liquid meals like smoothies, about 1 hour to 2 hours, depending on what ingredients are inside of that. And then finally, snacks usually take about 45 minutes to 1 hour to fully leave your stomach if they are a small carb protein blend. So depending on what time your student has lunch and what time they have an event will determine if they need to add a snack in between for a little boost. Or if your athlete has their activity in the evening, we'll determine how big dinner is, if they want to eat something small for dinner or if they just want to eat a snack and then do their dinner afterwards. Here are a couple examples of snacks if you have a 60 to 90 minute window in between your eating experience and your activity. So you're going to notice that there's a lot of carb protein blends. Again, the longer time you have in between your experience, your eating experience into your exercise, you're going to be able to tolerate a blend of nutrients. So there's a bunch of carb protein options on that screen. If you're short on time and you only have about an hour before you have to exercise, then you want to go with more carbohydrates. Carbohydrates, again, broken down really quickly. We don't want a lot of protein, definitely don't want any fat, because that's going to take too long to break down. If you are going right from school to practice and you literally only have like 45-minute turnaround, fruit is a great option for here. Those little mini fig bars, if you've seen them before, those are a great option to give you nutrition. Cereal bars. Watch your granola bars if they have a lot of fat. If they're nut-based, sometimes they won't completely digest in time. Little squeezy applesauce pouches, they're easy. I'm just trying to think of things that don't require refrigeration so that you can put them in your student-athlete's bag and be able to sit all day before they're able to eat it. Main things you want to think about for pre-workout nutrition. Number one, try not to eat a lot of high sugar foods. You're going to get that boost of energy, but then you're going to come crashing down hard after that. So we want to make sure we're not eating something really high in sugar 15 to 45 minutes before a workout. You'll notice you have energy for the first quarter, but you definitely will not have energy for the second half. All right. My one son, he used to play lacrosse, and I remember going to tournaments, and the whole thing would just be set up with candy. And I brought a bag of apples, but I also came home with my bag of apples because nobody chose them, not when there's a table full of candy available. And these boys, they were all full of energy that first quarter, but they were walking the second half, and we did not do well that tournament. I could have told them so, but nobody wanted to listen to me. The other thing, you want to make sure you're not eating anything really high fat right before an event. Again, fat takes a long time to leave your stomach. It takes about 3 hours. So no cheeseburgers before a major event, no milkshakes, nothing that's really high in fat that's going to sit there and make you feel queasy. Biggest thing is before and after your workout, you want to have simple carbs, so those easy to digest carbohydrates, but complex everywhere else. So we want that high fiber carbohydrate for your main meals, and then for the snacks around your workouts, we want to go more simple carbs. Another recipe that you have in your handout are these energy bites. This is one of my favorite things to make. And actually, I don't even make them anymore. They're so simple, doesn't require any baking, so students can make this. You just dump all the ingredients into a bowl, roll them into balls, stick them in the refrigerator or freezer, and they're ready to go. Great pre-workout snack or post-workout snack. All right, let's talk a little bit about post-workout. All right, your number one priority after you work out is hydration. Hydration is super important. Before you even think about eating food, I want you to always be thinking about replacing your fluid loss first. So first and foremost is hydration. You'll notice here it says drink water until your urine is clear and copious. So we want it clear to light pale yellow. Copious just means a lot, right? If it's only taking you like 15 seconds to go to the bathroom, you're probably not hydrated and you need to drink more. All right. Once your hydration has been replenished, then we can start talking about carbs and proteins. After you have worked out, especially after a really, really hard workout, your storage cells are completely depleted. Glycogen stores. Glycogen stores are what we call your carbohydrate stores. And so if you've exhausted them completely because of your workout, we're going to need to replace them. And so this is where carbohydrates comes in, and then we want that protein for recovery. The goal for post-workout nutrition is a 3-to-1 ratio. 3 grams of carbs for every gram of protein. So for most athletes, that's going to be about 45 to 60 grams of carb and 15 to 20 grams of protein immediately following a performance. All right, again, carbohydrates replenish your glycogen stores, protein rebuilds muscle and aids in recovery. So here are a bunch of examples of what to do post-workout. Now let me say this. Ideally, you want to get something into your system within an hour of your exercise. If your next meal, like dinner, is going to be within an hour of your performance, then dinner can be your post-workout recovery. But if dinner isn't going to be for a couple more hours just because you eat later or you're not able to get to dinner, then you're going to want to add something like a post-workout snack to start the recovery process. The easiest post-workout recovery food to consume, especially for students, chocolate milk, right? Chocolate milk is not a hardship for most people to consume. Most of them like it, and it is the perfect 3-to-1 ratio of carbs to protein. It's also very accessible, very easy to get your hands on chocolate milk or to make it. You can find it at every single convenience store. So chocolate milk is an easy one, especially if you need something quick. But of course, you can eat certain foods, and the ones listed are in 3-to-1 ratios. Okay? So again, if you do not have plans to eat a meal within an hour of your performance, then go ahead and grab one of these snacks instead. All right. I just mentioned that your number one goal after a workout is to replenish your fluid losses. So I just want to make a brief note about hydration. Hydration is the difference between winning and losing games, and I promise you I'm not being dramatic right now. That is how important it is to your performance. Why do we need water? Well, muscle contraction. If you want your muscles to move, they need to be properly hydrated. Most females are anywhere between 45 to 60% of their body is water. Most males are 50 to 65% water. Water is the foundation of everything your body does. So if you do not have water in your system, everything is going to work harder. Water is important for blood volume, so blood flows easily through your system, and also for temperature regulation. We talked about how important it is that you don't overheat. Many of you have ever seen a car overheat. An overheated car does not work. It's sitting on the side of the road. So we want to make sure that you have enough energy for your sport. Signs of dehydration, obviously thirst, dry mouth, fatigue, loss of strength, loss of focus, and headache. So if you are experiencing any of these symptoms, make sure you get yourself to a water bottle right away. Usually if you are thirsty, it's too late. You're already dehydrated. Doesn't mean you can't correct for it. It just means that dehydration has already started. And just a 3% drop in hydration can equal a 30% decrease in performance. So again, these numbers are pretty, they don't lie. They're pretty convincing. Make sure you are drinking enough water. How much water do you need? So everybody, not just athletes, an easy way to figure out how much water you need to consume is to take your body weight and divide it by 2. So if you weigh 150 pounds, that would be 75 ounces of water every day. All right? So that is just what you need as your foundation. That has nothing to do with exercise and working out. That is just how much water you need a day just because you're a human and you are alive. All right? The goal is to go to the bathroom about every 2 to 3 hours, and again, clear and copious. So I have a nice, I don't know how well this shows up here, but this lovely urine drop at the top of the page. And you'll notice that there's different shades of yellow. Ideally, you want your urine to look like the upper half of the urine drop. If your first urine of the day looks darker, of course it will, because you've most likely held it all night. So I'm okay if the first urine of the day is a little bit darker, but after that, we do want it to be on the lighter side. So keep this color chart in mind when you go to the bathroom. Let's talk a little bit, though, about recommendations for fluid and hydration. So about 2 to 3 hours before your event, you want to drink 2 to 3 cups of water. All right, this is where you're going to be drinking the most, but you want to give yourself adequate time to get rid of that before your game or your practice. And then about 30 minutes before you perform, you want to have about a half a cup to a cup of water. There's really no benefit to doing more than half a cup at this time. If anything, it'll just make you have to go to the bathroom right before you perform, and that might be distracting. Once you are playing your sport, the goal is about 1 ounce, or I should say 5 to 10 ounces every 15 minutes. 1 ounce equals 1 gulp, right? My athletes don't have time to be measuring out ounces while they're playing their sport. So it's just an easy rule of thumb, 5 gulps about every 15 minutes. That should keep you well hydrated throughout your event. And then finally, we want to replace any sweat loss with fluid after the event. And it's a 1-to-1 ratio. I don't recommend doing this every single time you work out or every single time you have a game, but one of the ways you can see how much you sweat during practice is to weigh yourself before and weigh yourself after. So if you lose a pound in sweat from your activity, a pound is 16 ounces, you would want to drink 16 ounces to replenish that, okay? So again, we don't need to weigh ourselves before and after every practice to see how much sweat loss, but we do want to do it once or twice just to get a general idea. Some people are, performing in really extreme temperatures, and others are just really heavy sweaters, and they just sweat a ton, and we want to make sure that we're replenishing that. All right, so tips to staying hydrated. Obviously, you want to be carrying a water bottle with you wherever you go. That's going to increase your chances of drinking. I'm a big fan of straws. I feel like you drink more when you have a straw versus when you have to unscrew a lid. I'm also a big fan of starting your hydration early. Okay, so drinking water first thing in the day. If you wait till the end of the day, there's just a chance you're going to have to get up and go to the bathroom in the middle of the night, and that is going to disrupt your sleep, and we all know how important sleep is for recovery. So I don't want you messing with that, all right? You're going to have to get your body used to drinking. If you currently don't drink a lot of water and then all of a sudden start trying to drink all this water, it's going to feel disruptive and your body's not used to it. So just like pre-workout nutrition, you have to train your body to accept this fluid. All right, and again, measure your urine color and your volume to make sure that you're getting enough. All right, a couple more slides here. Quick tip when it comes to sports drinks. Okay, again, there's a time and a place for them. I'm not opposed to them, I just want to make sure that they're actually benefiting you. A lot of times we'll give sports drinks for an hour practice. Probably not necessary. Water's going to be your best bet. If you are going to do a sports drink, a lot of the commercial drinks that are out there, like your Gatorade, your All Sport, your Body Quenchers, all those things, they have a good ratio of carbohydrates per calories, and they also offer a really good ratio of different types of carbohydrates. All right, you want a blend of sucrose and glucose and fructose, because if you only pick one of those sugars, it's most likely going to upset your stomach. So a commercial brand really are balanced in the way that they need to be. Quick note, you never want to do any carbonated beverages before a workout. That's totally going to mess up your stomach. So don't drink any carbonated drinks beforehand. If you are exercising for greater than 3 hours, or you are in extreme temperatures, or a combination of the two, that is when a sports drink is recommended. But if you are just practicing for an hour, good old water is just fine. If you, again, greater than 3 hours or in extreme temperatures, do not dilute the sports drinks, because again, they are formulated with the right amount of electrolytes and sugars to benefit you. If your student athlete does not like water and likes the taste and is more likely to drink, if they have a sports drink, then in that case I would recommend diluting it. If they have practiced for an hour and they just really don't want to bring water, then they can put, like, I don't know, a quarter to a third of a sports drink in their water just for flavor and taste. That's the only time when you want to dilute it. If you're using it because you actually need it, you want to keep it at full strength. And then last but not least, I just want to make a quick note about caffeinated drinks. All right, I realize that caffeinated drinks are very popular. Now there's new drinks like Celsius and old drinks like Monster and Red Bulls. And most of these drinks, they're full of caffeine, right? But they also have some other substances like guarana, taurine, and carnitine, which are not really well studied in adolescent athletes. And my biggest concern when it comes to caffeine is safety, all right? A lot of my student athletes, they like these beverages, but then they're also drinking caffeine in other forms throughout the day, like coffee or soda or tea or chocolate. And so when we think of caffeine intake, we have to look cumulatively throughout the entire day. There is a formula to figure out how much caffeine is safe and recommended for adolescent athletes. And so how you figure that out is you take your current weight and you divide it by 2.2. That is how much you weigh in kilograms. And then you can go ahead and multiply that number times 2.5. And that is the safe upper limit of caffeine for adolescent athletes. All right. In terms of safety, it's not my preference that you drink these drinks, but I understand that they're very popular and that some people want to drink them, so I just want to make sure you're safe if you do it. All right? There's a lot of research on caffeine and the benefits of consuming it right before an event. We just want to make sure we're doing it in a way that's safe. When you drink caffeine, it increases your heart rate. When you exercise, that also increases your heart rate. We want to make sure that we're not increasing them, especially if there's an underlying cardiovascular risk that you may not know about that could put you in a compromised situation. So if you are going to do caffeine, just make sure you are listening to the recommendations. All right, so brief review, all right? Remember, what you eat on a daily basis matters so much more than what you eat right before an event. If your foundation is not strong, your performance will not be strong. Make sure you're planning. Again, don't let this up to hope. Hope is not a strategy that I usually recommend to my clients. Definitely not a strategy I recommend to my student athletes. All right, so we want to make sure that we're planning our meals so that they have all the components that we need to perform our best. Make sure you practice, right? We don't do anything new on game day. We're not quite sure how our body's going to respond, so we want to practice everything to make sure we're doing it correctly and make sure, if anything, nothing else, you've got your hydration in check. It really is the difference between winning and losing games. All right, if you would like more information about nutrition, I am here. We're going to be answering questions if you have them. Just like I mentioned earlier, we do have 2 locations in the district, so if you're interested in learning more specifics about what carbohydrates, proteins, and fats your student athlete needs, we're happy to help you. Additional resources, there's a podcast if you listen to them, as well as a book with family-friendly recipes. I just wanted to give you some resources in case you're looking for more help. But right now, I'm going to field your questions. And again, if you're listening virtually, you can go ahead and throw them in the Q&A. If you don't have any questions, that is the end of the, oh, you have questions? Oh, okay.
It says, my son likes to lift late at night, about 9:30 p.m., because the gym isn't as full. He'll go to bed 30 to 45 minutes after he gets home. If he insists on continuing these late night sessions, how should he adjust his late night eating post-workout?
So, can everybody hear that question? Yeah? Okay, so what I would recommend for that is he definitely needs a post-workout snack. Even if he's only going to be up for 30 minutes, he doesn't want to go to bed without putting something into his system. So it really depends, though, on what his goals are, you know, in terms of, I'm guessing if he's at the gym that late, he's trying to increase strength. So we want to make sure that we're putting an emphasis on protein and a little bit of carb. Probably the easiest thing to digest that late without keeping him up is doing something liquid-based. So a protein shake might be the easiest thing to drink, especially if he's going to bed soon after. All right. Any other questions? Yeah.
What about the early morning workouts when they just want to roll out of bed and not necessarily eat beforehand because that requires getting up too early?
Yes. Ideally, as well, and again, I think, let me back up. It depends on the type of workout. So if they're doing something more strength-based, yes, they are going to be able to lift heavier and lift more if they get a little bit of nutrition into their body ahead of time. If they're doing something more cardiovascular-based, I think they can get away with not eating something as much. A lot of the research shows if there's a little bit of something in your stomach, you can go harder and longer, but if that requires too much work, you can do it in a fasted state. You may just not be getting the full entire benefit. What I would recommend though is if there's any time at all between rolling out of bed and getting into the sport, even eating a half a banana or something really tiny on the way, just to get something in the system to prime it to get it ready is going to be better than nothing. All right. Yep, go for it.
In a lot of the healthier, like snack recipes, they call for a nut butter of some sort. What if you have nut allergies, what's a good replacement?
So you could do sun butter. I don't know if you've done that before, or soy butter. Sun butter is a seed, so you might be able to tolerate that better. And then a soy nut butter would be a great alternative. All right. Yeah.
Are there any protein powders that you recommend or use?
So really it comes down to preference. I always say if your protein powder sounds like a fun ice cream flavor, probably not the best because it's going to have a lot of additional ingredients in that may not be beneficial. So I tend to look for ones that are just strictly protein powder only. So ones that I like, Orgain, because that's more of a plant-based one. I just even go to Giant and I get the Nature's Promise grass-fed whey protein powder because I like it and it's pretty cheap. And it doesn't have a lot of extra ingredients in it. But there's so many out there. Basically just look for straight protein powder only instead of all the additional ingredients with it. Try to strip it down to as basic as possible. Thorne is another good recommendation. I like a lot of their products. But again, you can just go to Giant and get their protein powder. Well, I guess that concludes the evening. Thank you so much for coming tonight.